Reporting on the games you love by people who love to game. The MMO Reporter Network.
You, my friend, are listening to The Happy Hearthstone. This show is brought to you by Doghouse Systems, who make some of the most powerful gaming PCs on the planet. And I can say from personal experience that they have awesome customer service. Use the code MMOReporter at doghousesystems.com and get a free 120GB SSD. And by Audible, the best audiobook service in existence. Seriously, if you like stories at all, you've got to check Audible out. Go to audibletrial.com/MMOReporter and get a free 1-month trial and a free audiobook. Those ads help cover our server costs for the show, but if you'd like to directly support this show and the nice people who make it, you can go to gamediplomat.com/donate and show us some love. Thank you very much. Hello and Merry Christmas and welcome to episode 63 of the Happy Hearthstone podcast, the longest running Hearthstone podcast in the history of space and time and cards. I'm your host, Josh Augustine, and on this glorious Christmas morn, I'm joined by Scott Lance.
Hello.
Hello, Scott. How are you?
I am doing pretty well. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you, my friend. This is not actually Christmas morning, but the show will be up on Christmas morning, and I am looking at a Christmas tree right now, so it's kind of like Christmas, I guess.
I'm channeling the Christmas spirit.
All right, good. I could hear the happiness and joy in your voice right now.
It's true.
So let's jump right in. Let's first talk why we're happy this day. I'll go first. I bought my brother $50 of Hearthstone cards for Christmas and birthday. We combined his Christmas and birthday present, so we opened it ahead of time. We opened them together. Actually, it's pretty cool. We opened them on Google Hangouts, so we were doing like a screen share thing, so I could watch him and we could talk about all the packs as we open them. He got like 2 or 3 legendaries out of it, so it was really fun. Yeah, so he got enough dust, I think, to craft another legendary, like 3 epics, a bunch of rares. So he's finally got all the cards he needs for Mech Mage and Demon Warlock, which were 2 decks
wow.
he'd wanted to build for a really long time. So I'm really excited. So now we're going to be doing screen sharing and try and play through ranked together.
That's great, man. Yeah, those are both solid decks, too.
Yeah, I'm excited because he's never hit rank 15, which is when you get like the bonus chest reward.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be our goal for next month. We're going to get on Google Hangouts at least once a week and use those 2 decks, which are solid decks, and hopefully get up to rank 15.
Oh, yeah. You'll have no trouble.
Hope so. We'll see. We'll see, Scott. If not, we'll bring you into the Google Hangout and you can talk us through.
We'll see what I can do.
All right. Why are you happy, buddy?
I'm happy. It's the holidays. I'm going to have some time off work. My first year staying home for Christmas in a good many years, so I'm stoked.
Nice. Very cool.
Yeah, I get to see my uncle I haven't seen in 15 years. He runs an orphanage in Africa, which is crazy. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Are you going to feel a little guilty, like opening extravagant gifts or anything in front of him?
It might be a stark contrast to, hearing some of the stories he has to tell, and then, feeling like we've got a pretty lucky niche carved out here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, very cool. Well, let's dive straight into the review because we got a lot of cards to get through. Because there's no news, nothing has happened. Here's our review score. Arena score. Reminder, for every card we're going to give 2 scores, Arena score and Constructed. Arena is how well we think the card does in Arena, if you just see it pop up anytime during Arena. Constructed is how well we think that card does in a pre-built deck that wants the card most. So not in popular decks, not in average decks across all deck types of that class, but just in the type of deck that wants that card most. How well does it do? Almost like a best case scenario.
Yeah.
And if you missed our last episode, which we put out earlier this week, we did all of the neutral cards. So this time we're doing class cards, breaking it up by class. We're going to try and go fast. So we've divvied up the classes. We arm wrestled for each one. And whoever won it, so I took Druid, so I'll be going first. I'll be doing most of the talking for the Druid stuff. It's not because I've bullied Scott out of his opinion, but because we don't want to do another 4-hour episode like we have done in the past for this sort of thing.
Yeah, that's right. That was Naxxramas, and that was fewer cards in this, if I recall.
Yeah, it was. We've learned a lot since then, Scott.
It's true.
We've gotten a little faster. Although this intro may not reflect that. Let's jump into Druid cards. Very first card, because I love it. Raven Idol, 1 cost, choose one. Discover a minion or discover a spell. Any cost, any type. It's super flexible, right? You should always be happy to draw this card. You're only paying a 1 mana cost to get that extra flexibility in there. Sure, sometimes you're going to end up with duds, but I just really enjoy this card.
Yeah, if you can't find a good druid minion or spell, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. I mean, this is, you mentioned this before, it's sort of like tracking, right? I see a lot of druids playing this on turn 1, because, I mean, if you're playing like a slower deck, you aren't worried about giving up your turn 1 to really buff up your hand for later.
Yeah, fill in gaps in your curve or just pick the best, most efficient card.
Yeah. All right, so Arena, Scott, I think it's even probably better in Arena because you're not the drawing a random card is less of a big deal because your Arena deck is mostly built of random cards. So it's not like worse than drawing cards that you'd put in your constructed deck. So I think it's actually a 4 in Arena.
Yeah, it's weird. It's almost like if your arena choice was bad and this was one of the choices, you choose this to get to choose again during the game.
That's true. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like Inception. We're going deeper.
Yeah,
Dude,
sounds
so
good to
you
me.
could technically do this and then get Raven Idol again, right?
Yo, dog, I heard you like Raven Idols.
Yeah. All right, constructed. I think it's probably maybe a little bit worse, but I think it's still a solid card. I'd give it a 3.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, because it's not winning anything, but it's you're happy to have it. Next card up, Mounted Raptor. So we're doing this in cost order as well as how we've organized all these cards. It's a 3-cost common. It's a 3/2 beast. Eek. Pretty underwhelming because that's usually you pay 2 mana for that. But for the 1 mana premium, you get a death rattle effect. Summon a random 1-cost minion. So I'm just not sold on this one. In the very best case, right? You're paying 1 mana to summon a random 1-cost minion, which isn't really worth it to me in general. It could have a battle cry effect on it. It could, it's random, so it's inherently not as good as what you would have done. But even then, if you're evaluating that way, you're pairing it up with a Bloodfin Raptor. You paid 2 for a 3/2 body, which is underwhelming already. I mean, you compare that to something like a Knife Juggler, you get a 3/2 body with big upside for 1 mana less.
Yeah, it's true. I look at it like a Harvest Golem. Harvest Golem is a 2/3, not a 3/2, and it gives you a 2/1 when it dies. This will probably give you a 2/1 or a 1/2 when it dies. So it's very close to a Harvest Golem, except its initial form is a beast instead of a mech.
Yeah, that's fair. And yeah, 3/2. I don't know if I prefer 3/2 or 2/3. So maybe that is a wash.
Yeah, it's pretty close either way. It is interesting though that we're comparing it to a neutral, whereas we normally expect a class card to be a little stronger.
Yeah, that is very true. So I mean, Beast Druid is a thing, and they don't have a lot of cheap beasts. I don't think, in the class at least.
Yeah, there's the 3/2 or the 5/2 that changes forms. That's a beast.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's hard to compete with this. So I don't know, because I'd probably give a Harvest Golem between a 3 and a 4, but I would not give this guy a 4 at all. Should we go with 3? What can we compromise?
Yeah, it feels like a pretty solid 3 to me.
All right, I think 3 probably. I think it's fine in Arena and Constructed.
Yeah, and I agree. Like in the Druid, the Beast Druid deck, the fact that it's a beast is probably enough to warrant putting it in. I've played with it a bit. It's never impressive. It's usually fine. It helps keep board presence though, and that's what's nice about Harvest Golem too. Is if it's important to keep some sort of board presence, this does it.
Yeah.
And Druid with its, if you're playing Savage War or one of the buff Druids that like to go kind of wide and buff a lot of creatures at once, then it fits right into that strategy too. That's a Druid thing.
That's very true. Yeah, with the Panther dude,
Yep.
Panther card. All right, next card. 4-cost, 4/4, Jungle Moonkin. He's a rare. Both players have spell damage +2. This is a ballsy card. It excels in like super specific situations. If you're gonna play like a spell heavy Druid deck, like a lot of removal, maybe this is good for you. It's just hard to see a lot of opportunity to get consistent value because it could backfire. I mean, if you're playing against a mage, do you ever want to put this guy on the board?
Yeah, and you're paying a cost premium for an ability that benefits both players, so you had better make sure that you're going to make really, really good use of it.
Yeah, and I mean, Druid has a lot of good removal spells, but they're all pretty expensive, which means you're probably not casting more than one per turn. So I mean, your chances of getting value out of this more than once per turn is pretty low.
Yeah, you might be holding on to this with some of the super cheap damage spells just to have like a, an OTK. I mean, you wouldn't take somebody down from 30, but you could probably burn them down from, 10 to 15 if you pool up cards in your hand, open with this, and follow up with some other stuff.
Yeah, if your best hope for justifying this card is running Moonfire in your deck, I am not interested.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still 4/4 for 4, so I mean, I don't think we can go lower than a 2.
Yeah, I agree. Well,
right.
yeah. It's weird because it's half a mana off, but then I suppose you are more likely to make use of this ability than your opponent is, so it is technically, I suppose, a benefit, but it's a risky one.
But see, I don't know if you are, because I mean, unless you're casting this after like turn 7, your opponent gets to play with it first. I mean, because you're not going to have mana left to cast any spells.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, let's go with 2s.
2s.
Take us through the hunters.
All right, first up is Explorer's Hat. This is a 2 mana cost spell. Give a minion +1/+1 and Death Rattle. Add an Explorer's Hat to your hand. So yeah, this is interesting. It's it feels almost like a hero power that you get to reuse. You don't get to reuse it once a turn. You get to reuse it once something dies. But still, it's something like a hero power that you'll find yourself using multiple times over the course of a game. I do have this in some decks. It's never a super high impact card, but it does feel good to put this on a minion, like a taunt minion that you happen to have out that gets to stick around and be a little more annoying, or just put it on something that helps it survive a trade. Because surviving a trade with 1 hit point sometimes basically doubles the effectiveness of a minion if they don't have a way to deal that 1 extra damage, because it might take out a whole second guy. There's even some interesting tricks where with like Death Rattle shenanigans, like if you're to use Feign Death, then you actually get a copy of this back, an extra copy of this back in your hand, or anything that clones Death Rattle effects. You can get more of these. So if that's something you're interested in doing, you can flood your hand with these things. Also, you can throw this on things with charge, so like Unleash the Hounds. If you've got a bunch of spare mana, sometimes I've actually, played Unleash the Hounds and then turned my guys into 2/2s attacking.
Because you can put it on one, kill it, and then put it on the next one.
That's right. And even if you have a board presence, if you just have a lot of mana and nothing to do with it, and you're throwing them against something big to sacrifice it, you can use it multiple times a turn. So it's not something you want to count on. It doesn't happen that often, but it is one of those things that it can do, and it does provide marginal value. Yeah, so it's not bad. I'm inclined to give it sort of a 3 in both Arena and Constructed. It doesn't add a whole lot from a synergy angle for Constructed, but I found that it can help make really good trades in like a Beast Hunter, like sort of a mid or control Hunter deck.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't know if this is wrong of me, but I kind of value it a little more because of how unique it is. Hunters don't really have good ways of buffing up their stuff and repeating spell casts. I mean, with stuff with lock and load.
Yeah.
It fills a really cool niche.
Yeah, and that's a good point. It works really well with lock and load because you can cast it, and if you have tons of mana, there are ways to get this back and cast it yet again on that same turn.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm on board with 3s.
And actually, now that I think about it, I haven't tried it in an aggro deck, but in the later turns where you have fewer cards but mana to spare, you could start throwing this hat on pretty much everything. And aggro decks, those minions don't live very long, so it might help it survive another turn to do more damage, which is great if it works. But even just the free point of damage on an attack, you're often willing to spend 2 extra mana to upgrade something.
Yeah, totally.
So 3s.
Yeah,
cool.
I'm in.
All right, next up is the Dart Trap. This is a 2 mana cost secret, as all Hunter secrets are. When an opposing hero power is used, deal 5 damage to a random enemy. I don't like this. I don't know how you feel about this, Josh, but random enemy under those conditions, and it's so much damage, which I love, but random enemies, not something I want.
No, I don't want that at all, because, I mean, that includes the enemy hero.
Yeah, and if it was a paladin or shaman, then there's at least a 50% chance that you're going to hit a minion because they just brought one on the board. And I don't want to waste a 2 mana cost card on a shaman totem.
Yeah, it's just there's so many caveats and so many things that can go wrong, where you've got to believe this goes wrong more than it goes right.
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever play this. I mean, maybe in I could see there being a specific tavern brawl or boss battle where, you know, they always surprise you with the effects that they have, and I could see it fitting into one of those in a highly disproportionate way.
Yeah, I mean, but Hunter already has Snipe, which is deal 4 damage to a minion when it's played. I'd rather just you do that every single time. And that's not even a good card.
Well, yeah, I mean, to me, where I want this Dart Trap to hit is I want it to hit the opponent in the face. I just don't want to have a 50% or lower chance it's going to happen.
Yeah, almost certainly lower than 50%.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going face, they're going to have dudes on the board because you're not trading.
Yeah. And, I mean, some games go by when people aren't even really using their hero powers much.
Yeah. I mean, so I will say, though, the idea here is cool, and I would love to see this attached to, like, a small body, like the Novice Engineer is, right? I could get on board with something like that, but not as a whole card, a whole secret. No thanks.
Yeah. All right. I give this a 1 in Arena and Constructed, both.
Yeah, because it's not a 0 because you're dealing 5 damage guaranteed somewhere, but yeah, 1s.
I just can't. I keep trying to think of where am I going to use this in Constructed, but I don't know how to put this where I want it to go. And against some classes, it's just really, really bad.
Yeah.
Your 2 mana and a card offset. They're just 2 mana, no card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is scary.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. On to the Desert Camel. This is a 3 mana cost, 2/4 beast. So just a little over on the vanilla curve. Battle Cry. Put a 1 cost minion from each deck onto the battlefield. No, it's not bad. And it is a beast, which some hunters like. Not all opponents have 1 cost minions, so sometimes you'll be able to cast this and just get one of yours out and not one of theirs, which is pretty efficient. But I actually played this, and it often pulls something out of their deck, and I rarely felt like I was coming out ahead, because like my guy doesn't have any immediate board impact when he comes out. They actually get to use their 1 cost minion before I get to use mine, is something I noticed.
Oh, yeah, because there's readies when their turn starts.
Yeah, and so unless you just happen to get something with charge, I don't, there's one charge minion in the game, and it's not good. I mean, what's that going to do? 1 point of damage? So, I was a little more bullish on this guy before, but I think I'm actually turning the thumbs down to him, and I think I'm going to give him a 2 in both Arena and Constructed.
Yeah, I think I'm probably on board with that, because that's interesting. It's almost like the Battle Cry could be a net negative, and you're paying a stat cost for it.
Yeah. I think the good news is you get to control exactly what 1 mana cost minions you put in your deck. So, like, if you had nothing else but you threw in 2 Injured Cavaldiers, well, those are 2/4s. So that's not bad. But that's a strange deck where that's all you have. Or maybe even a Leper Gnome where you're guaranteed to get 2 extra damage when that Leper Gnome dies. And you'll probably / maybe get to swing. I mean, they'll have to do something to kill it.
Yep. But, I mean, you're going to have to run 4 of them, right? To give you odds that you'll draw the camel before you draw the 1 cost minions.
Yeah, that's another good point. I tried one in the... Actually, I forget what deck I tried in, but I had 2 minions that were 1 cost in the deck, and sure enough, I played my second camel, and I came up dry, and my opponent got something, and I'm like, jeez.
That is unfortunate.
Yeah, so I think you're right. You got to run at least 4 to be safe. And if that's something that's worth doing, that's fine. I could see, depending on your deck, Injured Cavaldier and Leper Gnome not being horrible choices. Worgen Infiltrator is not a bad choice either. Maybe that would bring it up to a 3 in the optimal deck for Constructed. I'm just not sure. I tried to put it to good use, and it just wasn't working for me.
Yeah, I think it's almost like the spell power, the spell damage one we were talking about. Like, a lot of people are just going to be running solid 1 cost minions in their deck anyways. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of times you're going to be lucky to break even.
Yep.
This is the sort of card where I just don't want the headache. I don't want that case where they pull out their Northshire Cleric and suddenly are able to draw 5 cards next turn.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'd rather not put that sort of randomness, because there are a lot of cool random effects in the game. This is not one of the sort of random effects I want to deal with.
That's a really good point. I hadn't thought about what the other classes are going to have to choose from. And you're right, Northshire Cleric is likely to come on the board. And what are you going to get? Like, if you're going with class cards, you're going to get a Web Spinner or a Tundra Wolf.
Yeah.
Which
Which you are sad you don't have Thunderwolf in your hand for the combo later.
Right, or Timberwolf, I think it's called. You want that in
Yeah.
your hand. Web Spinner's okay to be on the board. That's fine. It might someday justify itself as a 3, especially if there turn out to be more 1-cost minions with negative Battlecry effects, and if you try to do some other things to synergize around that a little bit. Injured Cavalier I keep coming back to, but man, getting a 2/4 on the board from this guy's good. But then you just don't want to draw that Injured Cavalier in your hand under normal circumstances, so why is he in your deck?
Yeah.
Yeah. I almost wish there was a mechanism to put cards back in your deck somehow that you don't want for effects like this.
Yeah, like if you got to discover from your deck or something.
Yeah, or like, I don't know, some sort of Battlecry effect that targets a card in your hand that just gets, flushed back into the deck. Like maybe it comes with some sort of stat boost for doing it. That could be interesting synergy, but
that could be cool.
Yeah, not yet anyway. All right, so those are the 100 cards.
All right, then I will take us straight into Mage, because I've been playing a lot of Mage lately, so I'm excited. Up first, Forgotten Torch. Love this card. 3-cost, common, spell, deal 3 damage. Shuffle a Roaring Torch into your deck that deals 6 damage, which also costs 3. So you get a slightly cheaper Fireball, basically thrown into your deck. It feels good, man. Feels so good, because there will be targets to deal 3 damage to early on. You're paying 1 mana more than you would for what's the 2-cost one? The freeze one. Ice Blast or
Frostbolt?
Frostbolt, thank you. So you're paying 1 mana more than that to shuffle a cheap Fireball in your deck, which has worked out really well for me. And it could just be the ranks that I play at, right? But after I've cast 2 Fireballs, you can see the other opponent thinks I'm out of Fireballs because they're playing stuff with 6 health, and bam, start pulling out the Forgotten Torches, aptly named. And yeah, I really like this card.
Totally agreed. This thing has been an overperformer, and I think I was expecting a bit from it. I was looking at it more through the lens of spell decks that just want lots of spells floating around everywhere. But the thing is, it doesn't really help you draw more spells, right? It just keeps your deck spell rich and gives you... So you're paying... This is another interesting thing to me, is that how is Blizzard going to keep helping Mage do what mages do, which is direct damage, without just putting a bunch of really efficient, like Frostbolt and Fireball and Pyroblast. I mean, they did all these, and they don't want to keep just doing those boring ones, and they can't make them more efficient, right? So how do they make them less efficient yet be compelling? And this is one of the answers, is it does a little less up front, but it makes up for it in the long run if you get there, and it turns out that it's worth playing. It's solid.
Yeah, it's been really nice, actually. I've been playing it a bit in Freeze Mage, and Frostbolt is so important that it was kind of annoying to waste it on early minions that have 3 health. So it's really nice to have the option of, if I want to save the Frostbolt for later, I just pay 1 mana more and deal with it this way. That's really nice. All right, next up. Oh wait, I didn't give it score. I'm going Force.
I'm in.
All right.
Yeah.
Next up, Animated Armor, a 4-cost 4/4 who wants a score of 4 but isn't gonna get it. He is a rare. He's the rare in the set, but he has the text, your hero can only take 1 damage at a time. I will not lie. I was super hyped on this card when I saw it. I thought it was very interesting, really cool. But the more I looked at it, it really just transformed into a 4-cost 4/4 with Taunt for me. Which isn't awful, right? But you compare that to paying 1 more to get a Sludge Belcher. That seems better. I will say, if this came on a class that had cheap weapons, right? If you throw it on Warrior, Rogue, if you could get this sort of effect, I love it. But Mage just has a hard time getting value out of it, right? Because if you don't have a way to valuably deal damage to yourself on your turn, and so you just pass the turn to them, and be like, yep, just kill that, and then keep punching me. That's all you have to do.
Yeah, man, it feels like a card that other classes want and mages don't. Because even Warlock can make great use of this. You know, I'm going to Hellfire, I'm going to cast a Flame Imp, or I'm going to use my
even
hero power.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, the mage just has no interest in this sort of thing. And it's not like this has any special benefit or special way of staying alive that makes it more valuable, right? It's just a 4/4 for 4. It's going to die. And all it is just taunt.
Yeah, it feels like this is a very freeze magey sort of thing, you know, invest in cards that are going to help keep you alive. But I don't know that freeze mage needs this.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'd just rather toss a Sledge Belcher in.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it compares pretty directly to Tazdingo, the Ascension Shield Master, which is 3/5.
That's true.
Taunt. I think it's just ever so slightly better than that. I guess it's not technically taunt, but might as well be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, in Arena, maybe it's a little more interesting because they won't have removal for it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I'm not willing to go above a 3 in Arena, though.
Yeah, I don't know why you go above a 3, but 3 seems solid.
3, yeah. And then Constructed, I think, is 2. It's just not good.
I don't know. Yeah, Freeze Mage is the only place I can think of that wants this. In Mage, that's the problem, right? I think maybe some of the randomization effects that are permeating their way through the game are going to make it pop up in other classes, and that's when it's going to get bananas. The other classes are going to want to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. Mage just making other classes jealous again.
Yeah, I don't think Mage really needs much help, so this certainly doesn't give it to him. I was surprised that they got Forgotten Torch, because that helps him out a lot.
It does.
Yeah.
Let's look at their last one. Another one of their common spells. 5 cost, Ethereal Conjurer of Cheap Tricks. A 6/3, Battlecry, discover a spell. So, at face value, I'm super wary of this card, Sky. I know you're more interested, so you're going to have to convince me, because when I look at this card, I see, okay, it's expensive. It trades with a 2-cost minion easily.
Yeah.
And there's no guarantee of spell quality. Obviously, most mage spells are good, so you're likely to get something. Freeze deck does love when things trade with their minions. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's not bad. Mage can often do pretty well at keeping the board clean and or freezing the opposing side. Enough to maybe get a face punch in with that 6/3. But it is a liability, right? I'd rather this was a 3/6 or a 4/5 or something like that, for sure. I will say, though, the Discover spell is pretty good. You're already paying... Well, if you're casting Arcane Intellect, you're paying 3 mana to basically draw an extra spell, right? And so this guy comes like roughly a 2 mana premium. Let's see, is that right? No, about a 1 mana premium.
Well,
only.
yeah, 1, but terrible balanced stats.
You're
right.
I
I would count it almost like a 2.
You're right. And I mean, yes, other things can trade up with him, but he can also trade up with other things, is kind of
That's true.
the flip you get. And 3 is enough to stay out of like hero power range. So it's not like a 1 or 2 to me is ultra danger. You're right. 2-cost minions can kill him, but it's only some 2-cost minions. The 3/2s of the bunch. I've played him a bit, and he actually generally hasn't been in that much danger when he drops on the board. Sometimes he gets like a dark bomb or something like that out of somebody's hand, and that's okay. And the spells I get out of him have typically been of particularly high quality. You not only get to choose the best thing you see, which is often something like a fireball, but you get to choose the right thing for your situation as well, and that can go quite a bit. Like if your opponent's side of the board is starting to look pretty nasty, maybe you choose that Flame Strike. If it's kind of late in the game and you just need to like hit their face for something big, maybe you pick that Pyroblast. And you're not going to be given that choice every time, but there's only so many mage spells, and a lot of them are pretty good. It's just picking the right one for your situation.
Yeah. I will say, he is a common in Arena, man. So, I mean, that is a good way to make sure you're getting removal in your Arena deck.
I actually think he's pretty solid.
Okay. Arena, I could go with a 4. Just because, hey, drawing that removal in Arena is awesome. He's a big body. They're less likely to have removal to chip away at it for free. Constructed, though, I mean, my heart says a 3. Are you going higher?
I could do 3.
All right, let's do 3.
I'm in.
You. All right. Take us away into the holy land of paladins.
All right, first up is the Sacred Trial. It's a 1 mana cost secret. When your opponent has at least 3 minions and plays another, destroy it. I don't like it.
Yeah.
It's odd. I'd much rather play something like a Mind Control Technician than this, because at least that's got a body I can fall back on if they're going to have that many minions, and that controls it instead of just killing it. And I get to, I guess that's random, but still, it flips it over. It's functionally random what their 4th minion is going to be as well. An interesting side note about this, Dr. Boom, if they play Dr. Boom while they've got at least 1 minion on the board, what happens is, because the order that battle cries and everything resolve, the 2 boom bots hit the board before he hits the board. So I just happened to be watching like Amaz the day that this card was released, and he had this in his deck, or maybe it was Trump. Somebody was playing, and so he played this card, and then somebody played a Dr. Boom against him with 1 minion on the board, and sure enough, the Sacred Trial killed the Dr. Boom because that weird timing thing.
Wow.
Yeah, so to me, it's kind of the anti-Dr. Boom card. Still not worth playing, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, because you can't rely on them playing it on a certain turn and not doing other things. Yeah.
Yeah, even if you knew every opponent had it in their deck, still wouldn't play it. Yeah. I mean, it's very cost efficient, but they'll still get their boom bots. And then the odds that you're, like, if they draw theirs before yours, which is a 50% chance, well, then you don't get it. Anyway, it's just not worth it. So I gave this 1s all around.
One other interesting combo that I will point out is that if they play Lord Jaraxxus, you actually instantly win the game. Because they turn into Lord Jaraxxus and then instantly are destroyed.
Huh. So if they have 3 minions out.
If they have 3 minions
gotcha.
on the board.
Yeah, yes. That is interesting.
But yeah, I agree. This card is just... There's nothing redeeming here. It's so random, so inefficient most of the time, or ineffective. But Scott, if I'm being honest, my biggest problem with this card is the lore. So we got paladins, right? Uh-huh. They're like holy warriors of justice. They're setting up trials and make their recruits run through that kill them? Like, what is this about? This seems very, like, warlocky. They're killing their recruits because there's too many of them?
It's a tough world out there, Josh.
Dude, it's weird. Like, the golden art has, like, these swinging axes and lightsabers shooting across. Like, paladins shouldn't be building stuff like this. This is the stuff of horrible, like, people trying to take over the world.
Yeah, yeah. Even on theme, it's kind of a miss, but certainly its ability is a huge miss.
Yeah, the more important part. All right.
All right. Goodbye, Sacred Trial.
All right. What scores are you giving it?
Oh, 1s.
1s.
1, 1, 1. Yep. Done.
Done.
Now here we go. This is I like this card a lot. This might be my favorite card in the set. Is the Keeper of Uldaman, a 4 mana cost 3/4, which is 1 mana overcosted. With a battle cry of set a minion's attack and health to 3. So this is kind of, I see what they're doing here. It's kind of like one of those humility effects that Paladin has a fair number of sprinkled around, except it's kind of middle of the road. Yeah. And I don't mind that. And the reason why is because they have the ability to create 1/1s for themselves. And so using this battle cry on one of your own hero power minions will take it from a 1/1 to a 3/3. And that's worth 2 mana to do that. And so given that this is only 1 mana overcosted and that's a worst case scenario, I'm sold.
Yeah, I wasn't sure on this card when I saw it, but after playing with it, I'm not sure I'll build a Paladin deck without it.
Yeah, I use it on big things to lower them. I've used it on, I had a 3/3 that got hurt, and kind of in the early game, and now it's a 3/1, and my opponent has a 2/3, and I can use this to save the 3/3 and let it attack, kill a 2/3, and still live again, which I think is worth it. It's just, you don't need a huge amount of value out of it to get, a huge amount of value, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, I've used it even on, like, Sludge Belcher, just to make sure I didn't have to throw 2 things at it. I only had to throw 1 thing at it.
Sure.
I take it.
So if you did that to save a minion, that's a big deal. That basically means that its ability kind of reads save one of your minions.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I love this card. I'm totally in. So I think you said you thought this was the best card in the set, right?
For my taste, yes. And I recognize that some of the legendaries may be higher impact, but legendaries you only get to put 1 in your deck. It's harder to rely on them, and therefore it's harder to build a deck concept around because it's a far lower percentage of the games that you're going to draw it. And you get 2 of these in your deck, and so that, to me, also matters a bit. Legendaries almost get, or should get, a slight cost reduction in its rating because you can't build a deck around it as well. I mean, it can fit into what you're doing, and it can certainly supplement that. Or if they don't need to be in a concept, if they're just standalone good value, like Dr. Boom, fantastic, then it's just gravy. But if you're actually, this thing can synergize. Well, it synergizes with the Paladin Hero power. You can count on this being present in most games.
Yeah, the thing I love about this card is I have never had this card in my hand. I've probably played only like 20 games with it, so take this with a grain of salt. But I've never had it in my hand and it feel like a dead card. There's so many cards that are good, and even stuff like the Aldor Peacekeeper where like, oh, I don't want to play it yet. I don't want to play it yet. There's always an opportunity to get some value out of this card when you play it. And you don't need to get a ton out for it to feel like a good card because it still leaves a 3/4 on the board.
That's right. That's right. It's a mana overcosted, and people play cards that are mana overcosted for what, in my mind, are significantly less powerful effects. Yeah. This to me is the MVP, and there are a lot of cards. I think it's much more common for a card to look more powerful than it is, and I think this looks less powerful than it is.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah. So I personally, I give this a 5 in Arena, and I give this a 5 in Constructed.
Yeah, I think it's great in both.
Yeah, I think we're going to be seeing a lot of this person, at least in people that know what they're doing.
Yeah.
All right, Josh.
And bonus points for Lore, because that was an awesome boss in Uldaman. And she looks just like her in the art, so that's cool. Okay.
Are you ready, Josh?
I'm so ready.
My
body is ready.
Because anything can happen, Josh. Anything.
Anything can happen. Anything is cool when you're part of a team.
Here we have a 10 mana cost spell. 10! It's called Anything Can Happen. And it's got a bunch of Murlocs just goofing out on its art. And its effect is summon 7 Murlocs that died this game. And Josh, I have to tell you, in our show notes, which I forgot to update, I had a super low score, very low scores. And I think it is actually better than that in Constructed.
Yes, I completely agree. There's actually a comment here where I am agreeing with that sentiment now.
Oh, okay.
Because I've lost to this card many times in a strong Murloc deck because there are so many Murlocs that have charge and buff effects that when you summon 7 that died, you're almost certainly getting 1 with charge and at least 2 with buff effects. And it's a significant face punch right away.
Right. And in the better constructed decks that use this, they're not just putting haphazard Murlocs in there.
Correct.
And they may even be staying away from Murloc Knights. I mean, it's nice to get those back, but the problem is what they create can dilute your sort of one-turn kill when you summon this guy or cast a spell. So those decks, if we're talking about the deck that is best situated to take advantage of this card, what that deck does is it tries to live throughout the game. It tries to bring out some Murlocs. It tries to do some incremental face damage along the way. It's going to lose the Murlocs. It's okay with that because it's going to bring them back for a power turn and do 15 to 20 damage or something later in the game if it can help it.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you start throwing Murlocs on the board, people get nervous and they do whatever they need to hit you with removal. So it's interesting when you're put Murlocs on the board, but you're not actually going for a quick win. Your opponent plays really inefficiently because they think you're doing face, and it kind of sets you up to, to stay alive and stay in the game long enough for this to matter. Where they've already wasted a lot of their resources because they thought you were going to peter out at turn 5.
Yep.
Sorry. Yeah. So obviously Arena. I mean, can we just say a 0?
Yeah.
Because you're not even going to have 7 Murlocs in your deck in Arena, probably.
Right. I mean, if you have a Murloc Knight, or you somehow end up with like something crazy like 3 Murloc Knights in your deck, you could take this and see what happens, because you never know, anything could happen. Yeah, but I don't. It's a 0 or at best a 1 in Arena, but let's call it a 0.
Yeah. I think so. In Constructed, in the deck that wants it most, an aggro pally deck, or sorry, a Murloc Paladin deck. I think it's at least a 3. I think it's probably a 4 in the deck that wants it most.
Yeah. So I'll admit, I've never noticed myself being beat by that deck, and certainly not this card. I've heard a lot of stories, though, from people that are good. And I mean, you just told the story, too, that you've been beat by this card. So I know it's happening out there. And I only ran into this maybe 3 or 4, this deck 3 or 4 times. I'm not sure I ever saw the card cast. But I think that's part of its problem. Is it 10 is, ouch. I don't think I can give it a 4. I don't. And I know there's a whole deck built around it. But even in that deck, it's still, you might get killed before it ever becomes relevant.
Still a 10. Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm on board with that, because we already had the whole debate last episode with the 10 cost artifacts.
Right.
On Rafam. So.
And this one requires a lot of setup. Right, 10 mana cost. You have to build your deck in a specific way. You have to have cast all these Murlocs, ideally up to 7.
But to me, it requires almost no setup, because by the time you've got to turn 7, if you're playing a Murloc Paladin deck, you've played Murlocs. Like, if you haven't played Murlocs, by the time turn 10 runs around, you have much bigger problems.
Well, right. But part of what I'm saying is, I think you had to build your deck in a suboptimal way to have played those Murlocs by the time you get here. So hopefully this is worth it and recoups your investment. But I try to watch out for cards like that Elise Starseeker that makes you work at a deficit, so that hopefully someday maybe you can profit. It's like something like Gang Up or Beneath the Grounds, right? You're taking that deficit up front, or even Reno. You're taking that deficit up front so that in theory, maybe hopefully you can profit later. And I often shy away from those cards, and there's certainly it adds a lot of variance, I think, to your gameplay, because if things don't align for you the way that you expect, you're not going to do well in that game. And I'd rather go with something that's a little more consistent.
All right.
Like, are you going to put 2 of these in your deck? Or 1?
I probably would. Yeah, because, I mean, yeah.
Okay, so you're that much likely to have a 10 cost card in your hand. I mean, even like Mind Control and Pyroblast, which are awesome cards that just really change games, people would only run 1 of those typically. So I'm just saying it's a big deal. You're going to end up with that dead card in your hand a lot of these games. So I'll say a 3 for Constructed, but I'm a little reluctant. I'd almost go down to a 2.
I won't let you take me to a 2, Scott. I won't do it.
Fair
We'll
enough.
compromise on 3, because I wanted 4, you wanted 2. We're meeting at 3.
All right, done.
Done. All right, let's jump into Priest. Museum Curator. It's one of their commons. It's a 2-cost, 1/2. Battlecry, discover a Death Rattle card. So, I like this card. It is a 1/2 for 2, which is bad. It's very bad. I don't know, Scott. I'm uncertain how to feel about these more specific discover effects. Because there are a lot of bad Death Rattle cards. Just being a Death Rattle card doesn't give you anything to work off of, right? Like, you can't know what you're going to get in a deck, and so you're like, oh, I want to put this, other than a Death Rattle deck. If you're playing a Death Rattle deck, which isn't really a thing anymore, you can't know, like, oh, I'm playing Control, so this will work good. Oh, I'm playing Aggro, this will be good. Because Death Rattle could be anything.
Well, you said there's a lot of bad Death Rattle cards. I think there's a lot of good Death Rattle cards. And that may be true that they're all over the spectrum, but you get your choice of 3, so the odds that you're going to get 3 bad ones and no good ones, to me, feels low, because the list of good ones is pretty long. And with the 4 times probability of getting a class card, there's only 1 class card, and that's a Dark Cultist. And that's pretty good.
You're right. That's true. I actually really like the Dark Cultist.
Yeah, so if you're playing this, you're often going to get a Dark Cultist, which is, of course, 3 mana cost, so the next turn it's kind of like a 1/2 punch, or kind of like a little breathe heavy on them than a punch.
Yeah, that's very true. Actually, yeah. And at this cheap cost, combo with Brand Bronzebeard, dude. Discover 2 of those Death Rattle cards. Okay.
No, that's good, because what if you're getting a Karen Bloodhoof or a Sylvanas or a Sledge Belcher or a Shredder? There's some good stuff out there.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I just got scared by the 1-2, which is, I think, probably the very worst stat combination in the game, other than a 1-1, which is obviously the worst.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, at least it can take out 2 Paladin tokens or something. I don't know. 2-1 is nice and all, but it so easily dies to hero powers. This thing at least will kind of need to be dealt with in another way.
Yeah, that's true.
But the stats, it's horrible stats.
Yeah.
But I think you're not doing it for the stats. You're actually doing it for the discover.
Yeah, just paying to discover, basically.
Yeah. And I do think that it's pretty cost efficient at that. It's just not high impact.
Yeah. All right, so I think, like we kind of mentioned with the earlier cards, like the Ethereal Conjurer and stuff, this is probably better in Arena slightly than it is in Constructed, because it just gives you another chance to pick through cards and get something worthwhile.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, what do you think? I'll go with a 4 in Arena. It could be pretty solid.
Yeah, I think it was interesting because I feel like I've been pushing you up here, and in our notes, I think you were the one talking me up.
Yeah, I think so too. This, how my perspective has changed, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's in Arena it is likely a 4 because I think you're going to get a high quality card out of this.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. In Arena, I think so. Constructed though, drop to a 3.
Probably. There might be a world because it uses both Battlecry and Death Rattle. There might be some interesting like Bran and or Kel'Thuzad and or Baron Rivendare shenanigans. I'm not sure Priest is the class for that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's true because I mean, actually, comparing this to Ethereal Conjurer, which we brought up before, I do like that this is cheaper, right? Because if we're looking at both those cards and valuing the spell you draw highly, having the cheaper cost I think it works better for those combos and just for, hey, if you really just care about the card it's drawing, pay 2 here instead of the 6 you were paying on Ethereal Conjurer. Yeah.
I think it'll be interesting to see when Priest gets another Death Rattle card and if it's good or not. Because if it gets one more and it's good, like the Dark Cultist is, I think this thing's going to become an MVP because the odds of you getting one of them, I don't know what it is, but it's pretty good that you're going to get that Dark Cultist. But if they add a second one in the class and you're willing to take either of them and you're really happy about it, then your chances of getting one or the other just skyrocket.
Yeah. And a couple things actually that I read about this card. So I haven't experienced this personally, but they were talking about how Priest has really needed a 2-drop for a while. And this, I mean, fits right in because they're talking about how wanting to have something up for Velen's Chosen on turn 3.
Yeah.
And this is, I mean, it is it really is like a perfect 2-drop for Priest. Draw a card for later, just have something on the board that you can buff up and trade or heal.
Becomes a 3/6 with spell power with Velen's Chosen.
Yeah. Pretty good. All right. Yeah. All right. So I'm on board.
All right. So 3 in Constructed?
Yeah.
4
or
in
maybe
Arena?
even a 4. I mean, so I don't play Priest a whole lot in Constructed, but if they really were in desperate need of a turn 2 and this is the best turn 2, I mean, maybe a 4. Yeah.
I just don't know if there's good enough stuff that's class specific. Because like I mentioned a bunch of legendaries, but they're legendaries, and the odds of getting one of those aren't fantastic. Luckily, there are 3 different shredders you can get, so that's good.
Yeah.
I need to play with this guy more and see how often you get a good card out of him. I did. Yeah. I used him a little bit, and I think I got a Sylvanas one of the times, which was pretty awesome. Dark Cultist came up pretty frequently.
All right, so let's give him a 3, with the caveat that we need to play him more. Maybe we'll revisit him later.
And if Priest comes out with another good Death Rattle card, then I think that's enough to bump it to a 4.
Yeah.
If it comes out with a subpar Death Rattle card, it'll nerf this.
Yep.
All right.
Awesome. Let's talk about a card we know for certain how we feel. Excavated Evil. It is the Priest rare for this set. As a 5-cost spell, deal 3 damage to all minions. Shuffle this card into your opponent's deck. I mean, yes, there are combos that will get value out of this. But, Scott, let's be honest for a second. In all of our past discussions, I tend to fall for these goofy fun cards with extravagant combos that you could do, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of my weakness. I'm not a big enough sucker to fall for this card, right? Like, you need a hyper late game heal priest deck to make this work, and you need 3 or 4 different cards in your hand. That's just not something Priest is doing right now. This is just a pure trap.
Yeah, I can't figure this out. I don't get it.
Yeah, like if it was 5 cost, deal 3 damage to all minions, I wouldn't be interested. And I'm certainly not interested if it then gives the card to the opponent so that they suddenly have an AoE removal spell that they get to choose the optimal time to use.
Well, no, you're looking at it all wrong. Because if this card is as bad as we think it is, then shuffling it into their deck is a huge liability for them.
Yeah,
That's the best thing about the card.
It is. Okay, so that's probably the best thing about the card, but that's not even a great thing.
No.
Like, it's like denying them a card draw, but you're still giving them a big removal, which, if they're behind, is awesome. So, I mean, if they draw this card, they just wait till you get ahead, and then this comes back to bite you in the butt.
I really don't understand where this fits in, and maybe it will in the future, but right now I think it's just a dead card.
Yeah, super weird.
It's like it equates to Hellfire, except it's more expensive,
and it doesn't even hit heroes, which is like half the use of Hellfire.
Yeah, and then putting it in their deck, I don't even know what that does. Like, is that supposed to kill their draw later on? Is that supposed to? I don't even know. It seems so overpriced. It doesn't seem like it has a use. I don't get it.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. What do you give it?
I mean, as far as I know, it is the only card you can put in your opponent's deck that doesn't let them also draw a card. So I mean, I think you're right that's like its purpose.
Wow.
I mean, arena score, it still is removal, and it's better when you're behind. So I mean, we can't give it a 0. I think it's got to at least be a 1, right?
Sure. Oh yeah, not a 0.
It's a desperate play in arena. Yeah.
And you're right. It is. I do like that cards that are better when you're behind. When you can't keep a board presence and they're just filling up their side of the board, well, this will help you out of a jam. It's good insurance. So that's worth something. Still a bad card.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably a 1 in constructed too, right? Maybe
yeah, probably. I mean,
the fact that I can't even think of like one realistic way to combo this doesn't make it any better in constructed.
Well, you got out all your holy champions or some crazy stuff, and then you use this in a circle of healing or a holy nova. Holy nova is pretty good, where you get most of the damage back. You get a bunch of healing procs, and then
That's a 5-card combo you just talked about, though. Like, that's so not gonna happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just even this in Holy Nova, I mean, it's 10 mana, but 2-card combo. You do 5 damage.
But you also need the Holy Champions on the board.
Oh, sure. Well, that was just gravy. But, I mean, that's if you're playing Priest, you will have stuff like that sitting around. Problem is, it'll kill all your Light Wardens. It'll kill all your...
Clerics.
Yeah, your Northshire Clerics, that you know, unless you had them buffed somehow. And that's probably my biggest issue. I'd almost like this better if this was like deal 1 or 2 damage and was a little cheaper, because then the idea is you could hurt everything and then follow it up with a big wave of healing and then just go crazy with your healing triggers. But with 3, you're killing a lot of the stuff that would be triggering.
Yeah. All right. So I'm giving it 1s.
Done.
All right, the last priest card, much more interesting, Entomb. It's a 6-cost spell, common. Choose an enemy minion, shuffle it into your deck. So the key with this is that it doesn't trigger their death rattle effects. Right now, other than silence, it's the only quote-unquote removal that bypasses death rattle effects, which is pretty interesting. So obviously you could be running Ironbeak Owls to deal with death rattle. So you're paying a little premium for combining it with a kill effect to get rid of the body too. I don't put any value on putting the card into my own deck, because I think that's probably hit or miss. I think 50% of the time good, 50% bad, so I just ignore it. Priest already has a lot of really good removal tools. It's kind of expensive. Yeah. What do you think?
Well, it equates most directly to Assassinate, which is just 5 mana kill a card over in Rogue. So this is kind of the Priest equivalent of that. You're paying an extra mana for 2 things. 1, to avoid the death rattle, which hey, if it's a Sylvanas, it's great, but there aren't too many cards where that matters. And then the other thing you're getting is shuffle it into your deck. I probably... I don't put a lot of weight on it either, but I probably give it a little more value than you do because it's at least turn 6 when you're casting this. You're probably holding it for their big bomb. And when you're getting later in the game and you're getting tapped out, your deck's getting cleaned out, what you probably want to do at that point is load up your deck with something of above average quality or size or heft. Even if it's not as good as something that you would have put in your deck originally, it may still be worth putting in your deck, especially if it's a Dr. Boom, right? That's kind of the ideal snag, is you use this on a Dr. Boom or a Sylvanas or something like that. You may or may not draw that card, it's true. I think I put this either at par or slightly, like 0.1 or 0.2 below Assassinate. And I'd give it Assassinate a solid 3.
And actually, now that you say that, I remember someone did Entomb Dr. Boom on me yesterday, and I did get really nervous suddenly because I think they had like 10 cards in their deck.
Sure.
And it's like, oh man, so he has a pretty good chance of drawing that now. And I think with how many good Death Rattle cards there are right now, and I think it's only going to get more popular as time goes on, like having a Death Rattle deck in the meta regularly, it's really cool to have an answer for that.
Yeah, and it's not just Death Rattle, right? I mean, you could hold it for that late game bomb that they play under any circumstance, right? It's their Varian Rin. Yeah. It's their what's the Paladin guy? I'm spacing on his name.
Tyrion Fordring.
Yeah, Tyrion Fordring. It's your Confessor Paletress. It's all these kind of things.
Although I will say, I mean, if you want something to do that, Priest already has a 3-cost spell that takes care of all of those guys.
Oh, yeah. That's true. Yep.
That was my big concern. Totally was my problem with the card when I ran into it. Like, I like it, it's cool, but Priest already has 2 or 3 cost spells that does this for everything except Death Rattle.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And you don't snag the minion, but neither one of us values that very highly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's another cool utility card that Priest can pull out that helps them just survive in different metas. Like, I think that's really valuable, even though maybe it's not super valuable right now, but when a Death Rattle meta rolls around again, this card is going to be perfect, and they're the only class that has an answer for it.
Yep. I still put this right there with Assassinate in my mind.
Yeah, I'm with you there. So I think that's probably a 3, right?
Yeah, put a 3 across the board.
Yeah. All right.
Cool.
Let's jump into rogues.
All right. We're going to start off with a Whimper here. The Pit Snake is a 1 mana cost, 2/1 beast, which... not great stats, but you'd hope there's a great effect with that. What is it? Destroy any minion damaged by this minion.
That's about one of the best effects you could have.
Well, it does mean it'll trade well. The problem is, against half the classes, it's just going to die right away from a hero power. And it's never going to get a chance to do its thing. And that, if this was a 1/2, I'd be having a whole different conversation right now. But the fact that it's a 2/1, I mean, I can't control what my opponent's playing, what class my opponent's playing.
Yeah, because what are the classes that can 1 damage? Mage, rogues,
Druid.
Yeah.
Some
Paladins.
Shaladins, some Paladins, some Shaman. Or all Paladins, some Shaman.
Yeah. Wow, yeah, that is already almost half of the classes.
Yeah.
Wow.
I just think it's too much of a liability. It's too low impact. If I want something like this, I'd probably just go play Maxna, I think is her name. The 2/8.
Oh, yeah. Or even like the Patient Assassin.
Yeah.
So you pay a little bit more, but he comes with stealth. That makes it way better.
That's right. I'd rather pay the extra mana, because I think that's a 2 mana cost, isn't it?
Yeah, just 2.
Yeah. And of course, he's still vulnerable to AoE or random damage pings, but that's such a smaller subset of circumstances where he's vulnerable. So, I'd much rather do that. So I give this a 2 in Arena, because, I don't know. Maybe it's even generous there, but a 1 in Constructed, because I just can't imagine like how this fits into a combo or synergy thing. It's like a tech card that is just too much of a vulnerability.
Yeah. I mean, they even put Beast on there as if any rogue card cared about Beast being on the board.
Right.
Like, it's like a Clockwork Gnome, but less exciting.
I mean, if you were playing a deck with conceals, that like conceals your whole team or something, I guess you could play that right after you played this, and it would live till the next turn, maybe. I still don't know.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
just don't get it. Yeah, if you want this effect, Patient Assassin, pay one more, get the stealth. Way
Yep.
better.
So, yeah, 2 in Arena, 1 in Constructed.
Sure.
Now let's move on to something a little more interesting. The Unearthed Raptor, and this guy's getting a lot of attention. It's a 3 mana cost, 3/4, so totally worthwhile stats. This is a spider tank stats, properly balanced at that, with a battle cry of choose a friendly minion and gain a copy of its death rattle effect. And let me tell you, there are some good death rattle effects to copy. If you want to start out at the legendary and a little harder, you get Sylvanas Windrunner, you get Karen Bloodhoof, cards like that. But these most often get used around things like Shredders, the Nerubian Eggs. You get a 4/4 off of that.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
Oh man, the Spiders where you get 2 1/1s isn't bad.
Yeah.
Because it's free value and that's kind of an easy grab. There's the draw card guy that I see played a lot with this. Just because if you can play that on turn 2 and play this on turn 3 and you just get an extra card out of the deal. Again, like anything you manage to snag is... I mean, you probably wouldn't run a spider tank in a deck just because, but it doesn't take much above that to make it worth playing. And so snagging really any worthwhile effect is great. And I especially like playing this with the give +3/+3 to a random minion. That's really strong.
Oh, yeah.
Which we covered him last time. Nuberous Sentry or something. I forget what his name is. Something like that.
Yeah, I mean, so it's interesting. I actually built a mid-range mech rogue deck. And I ended up tossing this guy in there because between the Shredders, Sludge Belchers, Golems, I mean, even Clockwork Gnome, get a spare part, sure. I mean, it's just it's all gravy on top of this guy.
Yeah, and this spare part, and maybe even the Sludge Belcher guy, those aren't great value. Well, actually, Sludge Belcher, 1/2 taunt, that's worth a couple mana almost, at least a solid mana.
Yeah, and see, that's what I love about this card. It's a 3 cost for 3/4. So when you're talking about getting a couple mana value, and that's like on the low end of the spectrum, that's incredible.
Absolutely. Yeah, drawing that extra card, but the Nerubian Egg is kind of the killer combo.
Yeah, that is just outrageous.
And Rogue's got a lot of ways to go ahead and give, kill them if they want, or just give some attack power for a turn so that they can attack. So they get value out of the Nerubian Eggs through other ways. There's a lot of good potential there. And I like that it's giving Rogue a little more versatility, because this card enabled a deck archetype that really wasn't seeing any play otherwise.
Yeah.
So good on this card. In Arena, it's a little harder to find good death rattle effects, but not that hard. You just can't build a deck around it so well. So I gave it a 4 there, because all it takes is anything to snag value from, and you're in good shape. But in Constructed, I think it's a 5. It requires combos, but it's so easy to combo around. And it combos with so much. I think it's a 5.
Yeah, I completely agree. This card, although opposed to I forget what we were talking about earlier, where it was the Uldaman, Keeper of Uldaman, where it's never a dead card in my hand. I have been tempted, and I don't know if maybe it's just a misplay on my part, but I sometimes hold on to this card even when I could play it.
Yeah.
And so there are turns where I don't play it, but the ceiling on the potential that you hit when you do combo is just so high that those turns don't even bother me, because, I mean, it's not uncommon for this guy to get double his value in mana cost.
Oh yeah. The Nerubian Egg combo, I mean, that's a turn 2 and then turn 3 play. Bam, bam. Yeah. And
Good luck
it
getting
brings
the
it
board
a 4/4
back.
when he dies. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with you, and maybe it's more like a 4.5 or something like that, because I generally try to avoid giving 5 to cards that require combos. That's why, like with Bran, I cringe a little bit too. But if it can combo with a whole ton of stuff and it's pretty effortless to do it, yeah, sure.
And I mean, and here, if you don't get the combo, it's still 3/4 for 3. Like, I'm totally happy to play that.
Right. The floor is that it's a 3. That's its worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right, last up in Rogue is the Tomb Pillager, a 4 mana cost 5/4 which isn't bad, right? That's another. It passes the vanilla test, although you'd rather see a 4/5 than a 5/4 in most cases. But I actually don't think a 5/4 is bad at all. I think shredders show that like a 4/3 is fine, and I think a 5/4 is fine. With the death rattle of add a coin to your hand, so it's not huge impact, but it does kind of sort of shave a mana off the cost. I mean, not of this guy, but of something else. So it means you'll probably be able to bring out something at least one turn sooner or later. And I say at least one turn because you might have other coins from other places at your disposal. Also in a like kind of a spell synergy deck, which is seeing some play again, that coin can come in handy. It can fire off the auctioneer or some other effects. Violet Teachers, all that. And also can instigate a combo. So, if you're trying to cast something a little ahead of curve, or you're trying to have a particularly big turn, or you're trying to play a turn with all combo cards, you can lead with the coin, and then suddenly everything after it gets combo. So, strikes me as distinctly above average. I don't think it's great. I don't think it's super high impact, but above average. What do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree. Actually, I've been super high lately on the Shadowpan Rider. Which is a 5-cost combo that gets a 6/7, and this guy plays the turn before and gives you a coin to guarantee combo that card, which has actually worked out pretty nice.
Well, if he dies.
If he dies, yeah. The way I look at this card is, this may be the wrong way to look at it. I don't expect it to live a turn.
Sure.
I expect them to either kill it with something or for me to trade it next turn.
Well, yeah, and if they don't, then you got a 5 mana cost card, 5 attack card that you get to do what you want with on turn 5. So that probably means punch and face, and that's like a sixth of a win right there.
That's true.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I've become a lot more attached to the rogue cards that generate coins, just because it frees me up from feeling like I need to run cards like. Because I even used to run some Sinister Strikes just to make sure I could always pull the combos off. And it just makes it like, okay, I no longer have to compromise on the cheap cards. I can actually build the deck with the cards that I want.
Right. Yeah, I like that they've been leaning into giving rogues coins because it helps their class mechanic. It's a very good flavor fit that I think that I'm a little surprised they didn't lean into it sooner. Yeah, I think it's good. And I think it's helping because Rogue's not been in a good place for the most part, right? I mean, there's been Miracle Rogue, and then it went away, and then there was Oil Rogue, but there's always been pretty much just one viable archetype. And I feel like they were always not quite what Blizzard intended and didn't have a lot of room to maneuver around that archetype. You kind of had to use the class list as is to make it function. And I feel like these kinds of cards enable just a broader set of decks, not only a new archetype, but a broader set of decks that can function within that range.
Yeah.
So I'm excited. Agree. I like it.
All right. So how excited are you for this card in particular?
What do you 4s, I think. I think it's above average, but I think it's just not a high impact card. Can't really be a high impact card. I think it's just good value.
Yep. I agree.
Yep.
I'm in.
Cool. 4s.
Cool. Let's jump up over to Shaman. First up, we got Tunnel Trog. The 1-cost 1/3 that I've been seeing a lot of on ladder. Tunnel Trog, whenever you overload, gain +1 attack per locked mana crystal. So as a reminder, overload is the effect on other cards. When you play it, you basically take rent out on your mana crystals for next turn. So overload, they've been trying to make overload decks a thing for like 3 releases, right? They keep doing these cards that are tied to overload, and this finally seems like the card that they really needed. They needed that early body on the board that just makes you terrified of overload cards, your opponent terrified.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, you have to play this early, right? But when you do, it's a big threat. It scales out of control, and 3 health is nothing to sniff at. I mean, Mage is the only one that has an easy time getting rid of that guy.
Yeah, I like this guy quite a bit. It's the mana worm for shamans.
Yeah.
And it doesn't trigger, it's a little different. It's roughly the same amount of cards it triggers off of, but what I like is that it can trigger heavy in some circumstances.
Yeah, because it's 1 attack per locked mana crystal, and there's some that give you 2, 3 locks.
Sure.
And
it's quite a few that give 2. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. It's not 2 is not uncommon at all. The thing I like about this card in particular, similar to what we were talking about earlier, this is one of those cards that's just going to get better over time. Because the problem with Overload early on was a lot of Overload cards just weren't very good. But now, I mean, we're getting stuff like Fireguard Destroyer, Totem Golem. These are great Overload cards that you want to be running anyways. So you aren't compromising to get this effect to go off.
Yeah, and even that 2 mana with an Overload of 2 to draw 2 cards, it's so mana inefficient. But if it read, 2 mana Overload 2, draw 2 cards, and give +2 attack to another minion, which is what happens when you've got a Tunnel Trog on the board, well, it gets a lot better. And then you throw Lava Shock in that same deck, and it, gets rid of all your Overload. Oh, man. I'll tell you, that Overload deck, I've been playing it and to good effect. I got it up to around rank 10 or so without too much effort.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I recommend giving that a shot. I think it's really come together recently, and I think it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of variants. I mean, you find yourself making a lot of interesting decisions as you go. The Overload stuff really makes you think and plan ahead. If you don't like a lot of processing and number crunching, what's going to be, like, how much mana am I going to have next turn, and am I going to use this Lava Shock, figuring out when to burn that. If you don't like that kind of crunching, don't do it. But if you do like that kind of thought, some people don't like Face Hunter because it's too thoughtless. This is a lot of interesting choices.
Yeah. Very cool. So, I mean, I think this is a great card. In Arena, obviously, it's a lot harder because you can't guarantee you get Overload cards at all or even good ones. So I think it's probably actually like a 2 there.
Yeah. Yeah, and you'd have to, as soon as you pick it, you'd have to start beelining to get more Overload cards.
And cards like that just always make me nervous in Arena because if you're given 3 options and one card is better, but the other one has Overload, you have to make the worst choice.
The good news is the best choice in a lot of cases is going to have Overload.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? I mean, Lightning Storm, Feral Spirits, Fireguard Destroyer, Earth Elemental. There's a lot of things.
Yeah, Doomhammer.
Yeah.
I mean, all those cards are good. Yeah. Feral Spirit, man. That's a great card.
Yeah, especially in Arena.
Overload, too. Yeah. All right, so Constructed, though, I mean, in the deck that wants it most, 4? Is it a 5?
It's not 5. But I think it's a solid 4. I feel like it functioned as solid 4. And I'll tell you that I run Neptulon in that deck, and every once in a while when you play Neptulon with his Overload 4, then you get to punch face really hard with that Tunnel Trog that wasn't looking too scary a minute ago.
Oh, I forgot that Neptulon is Overload 4.
I think it's 4. Maybe it's 3.
Oh,
it's
Overload 3.
Okay, it's a lot. And I love Neptulon. I think he's a one-man Murloc deck. You just play him, and then suddenly you're playing a Murloc deck. I think he's overlooked. I play him over Dr. Boom in that deck. And it helps when you're running things like Lava Shock and Tunnel Trog because that Overload is such a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. Up next, Rumbling Elemental. 4 cost, 2/6 minion, common. After you play a Battlecry minion, deal 2 damage to a random enemy. So this is not deal 2 damage, so it's not ping. It's deal 2 damage at once. Important to note. But I really love... First of all, this dude loves the number 2. Deal 2 damage, has 2 attack. I really like this in a control-heavy Shaman deck. The 2/6 trades great against aggro decks. Pinging for 2 is awesome against aggro decks. Like we've kind of mentioned with Brand Bronzebeard, so many cards are good that just happen to have Battle Cry, and so you don't really have to build around him. He's just going to proc a lot of times. I just like putting him in a regular Shaman deck. I don't build around him because if he procs once, procs twice, I'm golden.
Yep. Yeah, and with things like Fireguard Destroyers, I think I ended up putting this guy in my Overload deck because there were so many cards. You have your Fire Elemental, you have your Fireguard Destroyer. There's an awful lot of cards that have Battlecry effects and that are good cards in their own right. And we talked about like one of those. I forget if it was the Darkbane or Lightbane sister, but one of them did I think 3 damage to a target minion when you targeted her, and I'm like, that's almost too much because so much of that time that's wasted.
Yeah.
I actually prefer 1 or 2 damage. I mean, I'll take as much damage as I can get. I'm going to make it sound like I like lower numbers. I just don't want to pay for a bigger number because I think a lot of that goes to waste. And I think 2 is actually a pretty good number. It doesn't feel like a lot of waste when you're wiping out the 1/1s, but it's high enough that it can do some real damage. And there's a lot of nasty stuff out there that has 2 life.
Yeah, and I mean, while he's on the board, I mean, it's almost like he can dish out 4 damage a turn, because you also get to follow it up with 2 from attack if you need to. So he can deal with even kind of beefier things, like if there's a 3/3 taunt on the board against Hunter, I mean, he can take care of that too.
Yeah, this guy compares really, really well to Flamewaker in Mage, and he's maybe just like a hair less good than Flamewaker, but Flamewaker's, I forget what we gave him, but he's probably a 5 in retrospect.
Yeah, he is.
And so this guy is probably close. I think not quite as good. I think Flamewaker is probably a low 5, and I don't know. If I were on my own, I'd probably be inclined to give him this guy a high 4. But what do you think?
Yeah, I'd give him 4. I think the key difference is Flamewaker is in Mage, who's casting a lot of spells, and that's the proc, right? So you're going to get that a lot more often than here, where you need Battlecry minions.
Yep.
So I think that's what makes him a 4 instead of a 5.
Yeah.
In Arena, probably a 3, I think.
Yeah, because you just don't have as much control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's absolutely a solid 4.
Yep.
All right. Next card. Everything is awesome. I love it. This is the other crazy Murloc card. So they wanted Paladin Murloc, they wanted Shaman Murloc, and they wanted you to know. And so this is a 7-cost spell. Give your minions +2/+2 permanently, but it costs 1 less to cast this spell for each Murloc you control. So the important things to note, the effect is permanent, because that's unlike a lot of the other Shaman effects, like Bloodlust. And costing 1 less and it hits everything, even though only Murlocs lower it. So it doesn't just increase your Murloc stats, increase all of your minion stats, but only Murlocs affect the cost. Scott, first question I got for you. How many Murlocs do you need on the board for you to be happy with the cost that you're paying?
Yeah, that's a good question. So you got to ask yourself, is it worth playing at 0? Because if so, then it's playable and it's all upside with Murlocs.
Yeah.
And I think the answer is no. I mean, it's nice to give everything +2/+2. That can be a big deal, but I feel like I'm putting myself in some like Magic dream scenario where the board is full of just stuff, and then I have 7 mana to spend, and then everything gets to attack, and that's just not really how that's going to work. So I would say if I've got 3 on the board, 4 mana to give at least 3 minions +2/+2 is a pretty damn good deal. The real question is 2 Murlocs enough? And I think if you've got 1 or 2 other minions on the board, the answer is yes. Because it's not just the cost that affects the value, it's how many things you're buffing that affects the value as well. But certainly I think 3 minions on the board is enough to make a huge difference.
Okay. So I think I'm going with 2 Murlocs.
Okay.
Because I'm comparing it to Bloodlust here, which that would give it the same price as Bloodlust. And Bloodlust is +3 attack this turn. And I would equate +3 this turn to +2/+2 permanently. So I feel okay with that.
Well, so the difference is people use Bloodlust, they hold on to it, and they use it for the kill.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if it's better or worse, but it's not as good about getting the kill because you can't do the burst damage. So you would be inclined to cast this sooner because there's not as much use, like holding on to it, but it's going to help the survivability of the minions on the board. And you may actually be able to use some of them for trades. And I would argue this may be better at getting you out of a hole than Bloodlust would. Because Bloodlust will let you trade, but it won't let you trade and have stuff still around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. So, I mean, I think like any fin can happen. It's just... It's worse in Arena, because you're basically going to be paying 7 every time. But it is, I mean, at least it's not a dead card. You're still giving your minions +2/+2, which in Arena, minions stick on the board long time. But I think it's probably a 2.
Yeah.
I don't even think it's up to a 3.
But if you're behind, this is just worthless.
Yeah,
If you can't
that
keep
is very
stuff on the
true.
board.
Yeah, but in constructed, so in a shaman deck that is about about murlocs, and just flooding the board, I think it's a 4.
Yeah, the problem is there isn't really a Murloc Shaman deck. I mean, we've got Neptulon, but
Yeah,
the way I look at him, and I said that earlier, but it really is the way I think of him. He is a one-man Murloc deck. It's like I don't have to build a Murloc deck. I just put him in, and then, it's surprising because he can actually draw like Murloc Knights and whatnot. So I've actually been able to get real synergy around Murlocs, and even just having 4 Murlocs to play, there's always some synergy between them.
yeah. I don't know if it needs to be in a Murloc deck specifically, and if it's just more in a Swarm deck. Do you remember, like, that was the first Shaman deck that was really popular, where it's like you're running Raid Leaders, you're running Stormwind Knights, you're running stuff that gives everything buffs. I don't know, could that deck come back again? Or is it just if enough cards come out like this that make it work?
I think we need more Shaman Murloc cards, because Neptulon won't cut it. It's just a 1-of in your deck. It's too expensive. I don't think Neptulon is enough reason to play this, and I don't think Neptulon and this are enough reason to play Murlocs and Shaman.
Yeah.
I don't think.
You do get Siltfin Spirit Walker in Shamans as well, which is a Murloc.
Okay.
Whenever another friendly Murloc dies, draw a card.
Oh, that's not
Overload
bad.
1. Yeah, and it's a 2/5 for 4. I mean, it's a pretty decent card.
Oh, right. Because I get that a fair amount off the Murloc Knight or Neptulon. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
forgot that was a Shaman
me
card,
too.
to be honest.
Well, and that's a big deal.
Yeah.
So maybe
Because, I mean, that's the Achilles heel of the Murloc deck, is running out of cards.
Okay. Yep.
So, I don't know. I think this deck is here and it's decent. I don't think it's top tier yet. But I don't know. If I'm gonna have to play around with it more. It feels like something you can make work. I believe in it. I believe in Gotham.
All right, we'll try it. But until then, what are we rating it?
I want to give it a 4. Because in the deck that wants it most, in the Murloc Swarm deck, it's a great card.
Yeah, I'll run with that. I just don't know if that's a good deck.
Yeah, and so, I mean, maybe we need to fine-tune our review process, because we're not reviewing the deck, right? We're reviewing the card.
Right.
But I don't know. My heart says 4, Scott.
Yeah, we'll go with it. Let's do it.
All right. Take us into Warlock.
First up, we got the Reliquary Seeker. It is a 1-mana cost 1/1, which is not great, with a battle cry that if you have 6 other minions, gain +4/+4. So, I will say, this fires a lot more often than I thought it was going to. In the decks that are built for it, people are not having a hard time getting this off. Have you seen this
really
played much?
Surprises me. I've never actually seen this happen in games.
Oh, you haven't?
I've never seen it actually happen.
Oh, I've seen it many times against me. I haven't played it myself.
So how is it that they're getting so many minions sticking on the board?
Oh man, imps, implosion, imp gang boss. Sometimes you get the Dreadsteed in there.
Okay.
You get what's the 3/4 that when he dies summons a random demon from your hand? That just helps with stickiness. Void Caller helps with stickiness. Yeah.
Okay. And
it's
and
real.
It's all right. It just seems such a small card to be building around. It's weird.
I know, but when you can play that 1 mana cost 5/5, it's intense. And so I'm not saying this is great. In fact, I think we had it rated pretty low, but then I played against it enough times where I'm like, we may have rated it too low. I think in Arena it's going to be hard to get to work because you can't really set things up. You have to pick very specific minions around just keeping the board full. Yeah. And Warlock hasn't really historically rewarded you for that because there aren't any buffs that buff everything on your side in Warlock. But this does reward you for having a lot of stuff on the board. So this is really starting to light up that archetype. And it turns out Warlock's good at it. It's one of the best classes at it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So how high are you thinking? So
1 in Arena where you can't control it.
Yeah.
I might call it a 3 in constructed. I don't think it's great. And if you just can't get those 6 minions, it's a dead card in your hand because you're not going to cast it as a 1/1. You're just never going to do that. You're going to hold it in your hand and hope that you get to the 6 cards. So what I can't see is how many games I came against this thing, but my opponent didn't cast it because they couldn't get the board set up right. So that I think skews things maybe a little bit. It always looks more impressive than it is because you only see it when it's successful. You don't see it when they're trying. Even still, definitely a 2, maybe as high as a 3, because in that deck does seem to be able to consistently play it. It's very strong.
Okay, I will follow your lead because, like I said, I still have yet to see this thing take shape.
Well, maybe I'll build a deck around this, and we can do some for fun games, and
Yeah.
we'll see if I can get it to trigger or how often it ends up sitting in my hand.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
All right. Next up is the Dark Peddler. This is a 2 mana cost, 2/2, with a battle cry of Discover, a 1-cost card. And this is interesting for Zoo decks, and in fact, this helps with Reliquary Seeker, right? Because this is a cheap minion that's likely to let you select another minion that's cheap that you can get on the board if that's something you want to do. And with something like a 1-cost, a lot of times people hold on to that in their hand and then, flush out a bunch of stuff. They're not trying to get to 7 minions or 6 minions the turn before and then hoping they all live, right? Part of it is getting up to that number on your turn when it's within your control, and then topping it off with that 1 mana for the Reliquary Seeker. So I think he contributes well to that. He's good about keeping stuff on the board. There are some decent 1-cost warlock spells if you're in the market for them at that time.
Yeah.
And it's good to have the choice when you're playing this guy.
Yeah, I mean, Mortal Coil, Power Overwhelming, Soulfire.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even Corruption isn't terrible. I mean, depending on the situation. Blood Imp, Flame Imp, Void Walker. I mean, I'm happy to get almost any of those cards.
Right. And a half mana premium on this, that's not bad. I mean, you're not going to get something that's high impact, but you're going to get something that's, I think, a good value. And again, with the multiple cards and multiple bodies on the board. You kind of have that going for you. So I think it's solid in Arena because it doesn't really need to synergize with anything. It's a pretty good value card. So I gave it a 3 there. And then I think in Constructed, it does a good job of helping some deck concepts, especially that lots of stuff on the board thing. So I gave it a 4 there.
Yeah, I completely agree. I've been really enjoying this card.
Very cool. All right, last Warlock card is the Curse of Reform. A lot of A's there. 2 of them, I guess.
Hey, 3.
Well, yeah. If you include the first one. So 2 mana cost spell. Give your opponent a cursed card. While they hold that, they take 2 damage on their turn. I don't think I like this, and let me talk through why. So you spend 2 mana on your turn, and you spend a card, and then you put a card in their hand where they take 2 damage, and they need to spend 2 mana. Now, they're almost always going to spend that 2 mana as soon as they can, which means you broke even on the mana. You both spent 2 mana, except that you spent a card, and they took 2 damage. And while they might hold on to it for longer and take more damage, and while that seems like an upside, it's not going to be when you want them to take damage. It's going to be when they want to take damage instead of spending the 2 mana. So as good as it may seem that it could do extra damage, in reality, if they take extra damage, it's because it's more advantageous for them to do that. So it's actually downside in a way that they might take more damage. Because again, it's their choice, and it's so that because their mana is best spent. So when I look at it through that lens, I don't want to spend a card making them take 2 damage. That just doesn't seem worth it. I mean, Hunter gets that with their hero power that they don't have to put a card on.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. I don't get it. This card, you said exactly what you just said. It was one of the biggest things I've learned from this show was way back when you talked about cards that give your opponents the choice.
Yeah.
Means that the worst case scenario will always happen for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I always think about that whenever cards like this pop up now. And I just have this impulsive reaction against them now, unless both of the choices are so horrible that it's going to work out great. But here, yeah, most of the times when opponents play this against me, I'm just like, okay, fine, I didn't have anything to play on curve anyways. No big deal. Like, let's move on.
Yeah, this card feels like a real trap to me. I think what people are going to say is, yeah, well, I'm out 2 mana, they're out 2 mana, except they're going to take 2 damage and possibly more, so that seems good, right? And my answer is no. And it's not impacting the board, and it's not killing anything. It's not turning the game in your favor at all. I have a sneaking suspicion that they're going to make more use of these cursed cards in the future, because it's a very warlocky thing to do. It's like a damage over time effect on the opposing player, right? So I bet we're going to see in the next expansion something else that puts cursed cards in their hand, and then I bet at some point we're going to see something that makes use of cursed cards somehow.
Oh, here you go. Want to hate life preemptively in the future here? They're basically going to do a secret paladin equivalent. Put all curse cards in your hand into your opponent's hand, or in your deck into your opponent's hand.
Oh, yeah.
So you toss like 3 curses. So then they suddenly have to spend 6 mana if they want to get it out of their hand or something.
Yeah, or I can imagine a world where there's a card that explodes any curse cards in their hand and does like 4 damage or something. It just blows them up. Because it just feels like a very warlocky thing to do. And this card can't be the end of what they're going to do with these cursed cards.
Yeah.
It just can't
how about
be.
this? You put it in their hand, and it costs 5, but the cost reduced once every turn. So they have to pay 5 to get rid of it immediately. Or if they take the damage for 3 turns, they only have to pay 2.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh. That's interesting.
Kind of fun.
Yeah. So,
anyways,
yeah, there's going to be more cursed stuff in the future. I'm calling it here. I could be wrong, but I fully expect it.
So we give the future a 5. But what do we give the current card?
1s, man. This is bad.
Yeah, I agree. It's
bad,
pretty
bad.
Let's take a look at a curse card that maybe is better. In Warrior, the Cursed Blade. It's a 1-cost 2/3. It's their rare, but the effect on is double all damage dealt to your hero while you have this weapon equipped. So sorry, it's not any better.
Yeah.
Right? So 2 is just such... It's not a good number to have on attack. Like, especially when the warrior has a 3 damage. It has a 3/2 instead of the 2/3 for 1 more without the big downside. Warrior has too many weapons already. This is not a better option than any other ones.
Yeah, I don't get this. If this were a 3/2, I'd be more open to trying to figure out if it was really as bad as it seemed. But as a 2/3, it is absolutely without question as bad as it seems, because you can't even get rid of it, right?
Yeah.
Like
3 turns,
right? Make this apply to 1 or tops 2 swings, but 3 turns, I can't even get rid of this if I want to get rid of it. And I almost wish it like only applied to when you attacked. That to me would be more interesting. Like I could go face with it and not take the damage, or I could, if I'm using it for control, then I'm going to hurt. Okay, that seems like maybe a fine trade-off. But everything. They're just going to start punching face with everything on the board. And I don't know if this is meant to go along with taunt warriors or something. Because if you are hiding behind a huge wall of taunt and you're never going to get hit in the face, and you're only punching their face with it, that's the only scenario where I can think of that this is worth anything.
Yeah, but even then, as soon as you mention taunt, like, if your opponent throws down a taunt weapon, GG concede, right? Or sorry, a taunt minion. Because at that point, you have no choice.
Yeah.
You just have to take a ton of double damage to the face.
Yeah, you either hit him in the face so you can try and get rid of this weapon, or you hold on to it and you just risk being hit with even more stuff.
Yeah.
This is such a liability.
And the upside for that liability is not that high.
No.
You're not getting much out of it.
No, not at all. Yeah. I mean, paying 2 mana for this without the ability is still worse than the Fiery War Axe, which is kind of the warrior's bread and butter. And it's almost like they're trying to dilute Fiery War Axe, and I don't know, maybe in Arena, you get this instead of that or something. I don't know. But this is so bad.
It's at rare quality. Yeah. It's so weird.
Yeah, this is so bad. And when everybody's saying, and even Blizzard's saying, that Warrior needs more help in Arena, this is not it. I mean, luckily it's a rare, and you only have so many picks at rares, and but this, I mean, this is just going to be a dead card in some picks. Nobody's ever going to play this.
Yeah. I mean, three durability is the killer. Like that is just if it was a 1 cost 4/1, right? So you only had to take double damage
Yeah.
once. Then okay maybe, but yeah, you can't afford to have this sitting around. Your opponent, there are way too many spells in the game. Like if they have a fireball sitting around and coin or something,
Yeah.
they're gonna be tossing 12 damage to your
Yeah.
face. That's terrifying.
Yeah, this is horrible.
Yeah.
Don't
All
play
right,
this
so- yeah. So
ever.
I mean, are we giving it zeros? I mean,
It's
it is
technically
still a
playable. It
weapon.
could be used for control. For one mana, you get to do 6 damage to their face. That's pretty good.
it's got to be aggro, not control, right? Because you don't want to be punching minions with this.
No,
thing.
you don't. In a pinch, you might if you had to, but no, you don't want
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. So, all right. Let's do ones. I guess it is still a weapon, but man, this game is going to lose you more games than it wins.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, yeah. I take this over
All right.
poison seeds if I actually would I?
Oh.
No, I don't know if I would. Huh.
All right. We're dropping it to a 0 then. Like it's
Yeah.
below poison seeds, dude. Poison seeds is our example for 0.
Yeah.
All right. We're giving it zeros.
Yeah. All right.
Done.
Done. Move on.
All right, and that's okay because we love this next card. Fierce Monkey, 3 cost, 3/4, taunt. Whew, another not so subtle hint. Blizzard loves dropping these things about a deck type that they want you to be playing.
Yep.
Hey, you like dragons? You like priests? Well, you're definitely going to be playing it. This is just another, hey, they really want Warrior Taunt to be a deck, and this is just another nudge in the right direction. It's a great, solid card. Not much going on, just great value.
Yep. Taunt. The taunt deck still isn't there. There's not enough. This helps. This certainly helps. We'll see what else they throw at us over the next expansion or two, and whether that eventually all adds up. But it's not there
Yeah,
yet.
I mean, the thing I like about cards like this, where it is their not so subtle nods, when Warrior Taunt becomes a thing, someday in some vast distant future, this card's going to be incredible because it's overcompensating right now. So it's going to be awesome someday.
And this,
But even then, like in a lot of decks, especially in Arena,
yeah.
I'm just happy to draft this guy. I don't care. I'll run no other taunts in the whole deck. This is a great card.
Yep. And that's right. So this is a common, and this is them helping in Arena.
Yeah.
3/4 taunt for 3 mana is great. It's just blatantly above curve. They're just throwing Warrior a bone, and making it common is just them really trying to fix the problem.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I mean, I'd give it force.
Yeah. It's hard to tell. Yeah, it probably deserves that in Constructed too. There's not a whole lot of synergy right now. It's a beast, but that doesn't do anything in Warrior, and it's got taunt, and that doesn't do much in Warrior yet. But it still could do something.
Yeah, I think. Well, even in a solid control Warrior deck, I mean, 3/4 taunts, good.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, let's jump into the community. This is going to be short. Our Christmas community section. The question of the week. There's none. iTunes review of the week. There's none. Donations of the week. Oh, there's none. Which means, Scott, we're going straight to your card of the week singing.
Oh, all right. The weather outside is frightful, but Hearthstone is most delightful. There's really nothing that can beat the card of the week, card of the week, card of the week.
I love it. Happy holidays.
Happy
Yay.
holidays. All right, so the card of the week this time is the other Warrior common, surprisingly expensive common. It's 7 mana. You don't usually see them that expensive.
Yeah.
The Obsidian Destroyer, 7 mana, 7/7. At the end of your turn, summon a 1/1 Scarab with Taunt. I think he's good, man. I think he's like Hogger, but arguably better.
Yeah, I think he's better than Hogger, too. Something 1/1, oh man, it's surprising how many times that 1/1 isn't easy to deal with.
Yeah.
Where it just stalls you out every single turn. You can't get through to the body, and the body's a 7/7.
Yeah.
So even if you do get through the body, you normally need at least 2 things getting through. So in Arena, this is absolutely brutal. Removal is scarce. Tiny Taunt will keep this thing alive forever. Essentially, if you have anything else on the board to help clear out the things that are trying to get through the taunt. He'll just stay up there. Some potential in constructed. At the very least, it's an annoyance, right? the free taunt, just like we've seen with Hogger, it's annoying.
Yeah, except this guy's at a fireball range. He's at a dark bomb range. I mean, 7 damage. I'm going to make a really bold statement here. I think this guy is almost as good. I mean almost as good as Dr. Boom.
Okay.
So
that's
all right. Here, let me make a case.
Yeah, let's define almost a little better.
Yeah.
I want to understand.
Dr. Boom is a 7/7 body. This is a 7/7 body. So that part's even. So what Dr. Boom has on this guy is the 2/1/1s with the crackle effects, mini crackles. This guy summons a 1/1 at the end of the turn. So he's broken even on one of them, and I think taunt on that scarab, that 1/1, probably breaks even with the little crackle effect. Sometimes not as good, but sometimes it's quite good. And can really tilt a game. Like if they've just got one big minion on the board, if their hero power doesn't allow them to do targeted damage, they don't have a weapon, like suddenly that little 1/1 just like stymies their plans. And especially if you've been good about taking out their small stuff, like if you've got weapons, it's generally you're taking out their small stuff, you keep fewer minions on the board, man, that can make a difference. And every turn that he lives, so it's possible over the long run that he adds more value. And the last thing is Dr. Boom, if his opponent has lethal, great, you spent 7 mana, you brought Dr. Boom on the board, pat on the back, but that didn't do you anything to save yourself. This guy can at least do something to save the player that turn.
Okay.
So I'm not saying he's as good. I still think Dr. Boom is better, but on a 5-point scale, I would call him like 0.2 or 0.3 better.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, they do a little different things because Dr. Boom is unmatched in just seizing control of the board when he drops.
Mm-hmm.
And this card's focus is a little different. It is about protecting the big body and protecting the person, so it does do that side better. I will give you that. But, I mean, I'm not going to fight you too much because I think this is a great card. I mean, a common? At a common? Are you kidding me?
Right.
Like at Arena?
Right.
This is incredible.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned they wanted to make Warriors better in Arena. Well, buddy, they did. Like
Right.
This is it right there.
Well, the 7 mana is the only drawback because the value is there, and in fact the game dominating potential's there as well. It's just 7 mana makes it so that he doesn't get to come into play very often. So you're gonna throw him back on the mulligan every turn. You're gonna run as many copies in your deck as you can get, but it's all about surviving till turn 7, and that's when stuff gets real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the most interesting thing, like, because you brought up the Dr. Boom comparison, I mean, you could be running 2 of these. So, I mean, you drop it down, sure, they big game hunter the first one. You could just drop the one the next time.
And like Dr. Boom, right? So the big game hunter, you still got the 1/1 with taunt. It's not a huge amount of value, but normally big game hunter just wipes out your investment. And it's nice to have something sitting around.
Yeah. This is great. Yeah. So I think, all right. So Arena, I'd give it a 5 for sure.
Yeah.
I think this is probably the strongest Arena card in the whole set.
Mm-hmm.
Constructed, maybe a bit less. I'd probably somewhere between a 4 and a 5. I'd probably go with 4, but it sounds like you might be going for a 5.
I think he's an upper 4. I haven't seen him played much, and I haven't had a chance to play with him yet. I think he came in on the last week, and so I haven't had a chance to play with him anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
He might be a 5. I can definitely say he's a 4 safely. I don't think the taunt decks are there enough that the synergy is going to be there, for him to be a 5.
Yeah.
But that may change soon. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if Bolster Warrior
Right.
turns around someday, I mean, this guy is generating taunt tokens every single turn. I mean,
Right, it's at the end of your
Could be
turn,
interesting.
so they have to,
Yeah.
a
That's
1/1
true.
with taunt won't live through a
that's
turn
very true.
cycle
Anything.
very long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, I'm so 4. what that sounds like?
Definitely a 4.
Yeah.
Possibly a 5, but definitely a 4.
All right, let's do 4 so we don't get crazy.
Yeah.
I don't want crazy Dr. Boom fanatics mailing bombs to us and sending hate mail.
Right, sounds good.
All right, so that is our review. We've got through all the class cards. Please let us know what you think. If you want to check out all the stuff we talked about, all the scores, see them all in one place, links to all the card notes, all that will be in the show notes on GameDiplomat.com. So we went there, click on Hearthstone. Let us know which cards you're having the most fun with, which ones you think we overrated or underrated. As always, you can contact us anywhere you like. Google+, you can search for Happy Hearthstone. We've got a whole community there. On Twitter, if you want to yell at me directly, I'm at jaugustine. Or if you'd like to keep your yelling more private, ajosh@outlook.com, you can email me. Or to keep it public and personal, the best compromise, post a comment on the blog, GameDiplomat.com. And if you enjoyed the show and think all of our ratings are perfect, please consider supporting us. You can find more info at GameDiplomat.com/donate. If you want to yell at Scott, where can they find you?
I'm on Twitter at Slants76. It's SLANTZ 76.
And if someone sends you a message in all caps, will you respond to them?
I may shout back.
Okay, good. Yeah, let's get in a shouting match. Loop me back in on that. We'll just shout around. It'll be good. All right, so Scott, thanks, dude, for hanging in there, getting through 2 review episodes. Again, if you missed the neutral card episode, you can go back and listen to the episode that came out a little earlier this week. We did 2 episodes this week for Christmas. Happy fun time. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Thanks for visiting the Happy Hearthstone and having a little fun with us. We'll see you next time.
See you, everybody.
Thanks for watching the video, everybody. Don't forget to check out all the other podcasts at MMOreporter.com or by clicking on any of the links here. And please check out our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MMOreporter. Thanks, everyone, and see you in game.